Oh, hello, I didn't see you standing there. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to study today in economics. Objective 4, there's a few terms that we need to get out of the way. The first of those are equity versus equality. Equality is what we showed you, or what I showed you on the Lorenz curve diagram, where everybody has the exact same amount. So, every person has the exact same wage, and that would sort of be kind of the goal of communism or something like that. Equity is a little different. Equity is where people are being treated fairly in respect to their wage. So the idea here is that, if somebody earns twice as much for a firm, so you have two salesmen working for a firm, or I should say two salespeople, and the one earns twice as much for the firm as the other one, well, equity would say the person who earns more should be paid more, and I guess in that example should be paid twice as much. So the idea of equity is, again, it's different than saying, well, everything's exactly equal, and it does allow for income variation. So again, in a model like this, it would be fine for a CEO of a company to make a lot more than a truck driver for the same company. You do get into issues of what you might call a pay gap. And you might look a few of these up and find some interesting results, but this basically is a ratio that's created from the CEO pay to either the lowest worker's pay. Sometimes people think that's a little unfair because maybe the lowest worker is, an untrained, high school kid or something like that. So sometimes people will do it to what they call the production line pay. So you might look at, for example, for Toyota, you might look at the CEO's pay and then make a ratio of it to a worker who's actually putting the cars together. So this brings up a lot of issues of how much is enough, how much is appropriate, how much is too much, and that. So do this real quickly, a little quick check. Put the video on pause here in a second, and I want you to just do a Google search of a CEO ratio or CEO pay ratio, and get a couple examples, and maybe we'll use those to talk about in class. Okay, then the next topic we need to talk about are these three words down here, which refer to different types of taxations, or I suppose different mathematical descriptions of taxations. Okay, so when we talk about a progressive tax, a common example here is income tax in most countries, but it could be something else too. Anyway, what we mean here is that as the value of the item being taxed, so in this case, the value of income is increasing, the percentage of income increases along with it. So for example, in a country, as somebody earns more and more money, maybe the first $25,000 they make, and maybe that's all the money they make for the year, but maybe that gets taxed at, say, 15%. Okay? The money beyond there, and it's important that you understand this, it's not if I make $26,000, all of it gets taxed at the higher rate of, say, 20%, but only the money you make that is beyond or greater than $25,000. So somebody who made $50,000 would pay 15% on the first $25,000, and then 20% on the next $25,000. Okay, and then maybe something higher once they went beyond 50,000. Okay, so the idea is that as the value, so this number right here, as the value is increasing, the percent that they pay is also increasing. Okay, so that's a progressive tax. Again, income's the best example, but it could be something else. It could be some other thing too. Okay, the next type of tax, and again, just mathematically, the type of tax is called proportional. Another name we use for that is a flat tax. You might hear that, especially in the States, you hear that as a nickname for it a lot. So this is, as the value changes, the tax remains the same. So it's 20% on everything. Doesn't matter what it is, if it's something small, if it's something big, the rate doesn't change. So 20%, 10%, whatever it is, the rate would never change. Sales tax is a common example of this. It doesn't matter in the States or here with VAT. it doesn't matter what the item is, the tax is actually the same. The third type is a regressive tax, and that's the exact opposite of a progressive tax. So now as the value goes up, the amount of tax is actually going to fall. And since that seems inherently unfair, I've given a clever drawing here to help you out. So maybe a house that's worth $200,000 is going to get a 4% annual property tax on it. So 4% of 200,000, quick math, I believe that's $8,000. And they would have to pay that every single year. On the other hand, a massive shopping mall that's worth $2 million, maybe they only have to pay 1%, okay? And that's going to be $20,000, all right? So in this case, they're still going to pay a lot more tax, $20,000 versus $8,000, okay? And they're still going to pay a lot of tax, and also remember the shopping mall is going to generate a lot of other types of tax, sales tax, income tax, all that. So the reason that they have this lower tax rate is to keep from discouraging people from investing in, you know, these bigger kind of projects that are going to generate lots of jobs, et cetera, et cetera. Some people still question whether or not that's fair, and I think that's a fine question to ask. But that's the justification that is typically given. Okay, you're going to need to know that stuff for today's lesson, so great.